Hello and welcome to another one of my Asana training videos. In this video I'm going to be talking about setting up projects and whether you should set up a project as an actual project in Asana or whether you're better off setting up a project as a task and the pros and cons of each option. Now if you have any questions at the end of this video, please leave me a comment below, and in the descriptions below this video you'll find details of how to book an introductory call with me if you'd like to learn more about my Asana consulting service, and you can join my newsletter as well. And if you haven't done already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you get notified about new videos in your feed. So let's get into this video. So first of all, to give some context to this question, why would you set up a project as a task in the first place? And the reason you might choose to set up a project as a task is, and this comes from experience working with lots of different clients, I find that when people get started with Asana, you can get a little bit carried away, and we set up loads of projects here in the left-hand sidebar. And we have loads of teams, loads of projects, and it just means this sidebar gets quite busy, gets quite full, and it means that the overall account just becomes harder to see everything that's going on. Maybe some of the projects are old and haven't been archived, and the overall feeling of the account is just that there's a lot going on, we're not really sure what we're doing with some of this stuff, and it just feels messy. And so to overcome that, what you can do is set up a project as a task. And you might not do this I wouldn't recommend doing this for every type of project. There are disadvantages to doing this, but you would do this with what I would call a mini project. So a project, let's just clarify what we mean by that. A project we generally consider to be something with like an outcome that we're working towards that has some kind of launch date or due date, end date really, in mind, that eventually that project is going to be closed. And so even these little, like mini projects that maybe it's something that is lasting like a week or two, we would set up those as like a task in Asana. So I might do that somewhere like in this project I have here called business. Now if you haven't seen many of my videos, I sort of have this structure in Asana where I set up Asana projects. These are actually what we're looking at here on the left. These are actually projects, but business isn't really what you would consider a project. And the terminology is getting a bit funny here. Like business is just a category. It's just kind of a department of work that happens. And so really this project, it's not a project. This project, business, is just sort of a bunch of tasks really. These are all just tasks. But then in here, I might have mini projects that I'm working on. So for example, let me show you an example. Migrate to ConvertKit. This is a project that I was working on fairly recently, and this is quite a big body of work. In fact, it actually has taken a few months. You can see here by the date range, and you can see all of these subtasks here. Now this is not actually a very good example. This really kind of ballooned to be quite a lot of work. But this is like what I would call a project, migrating email provider. There's quite a few steps involved, as you can see here. I could have set this up as a project. I actually started off setting it up as a task, and so I finished setting it up as a task with all of the actual subtasks be, the things that we need to do for that project. So that's an example of like a mini project where rather than setting up a whole Asana project, we just set it up as a task instead. And really the benefit of doing it this way is that you can reduce the total number of projects in your sidebar on the left, meaning your account is just generally a bit cleaner, a bit more minimal, and easier to see what's going on. But sometimes you want to set up your projects as actual projects, Asana projects. So for example, like this Pipedrive rollout. This is just a template. And so here we've got, various sections, we've got some milestones, and if we look at the timeline here, we can see different dependencies and due dates and things, which is really nice. And so the benefit of really doing it like this is that you would do a project or set up a project as an actual project in Asana when you really need more room to kind of plan the project, and you need a few more features here, like you want things like the milestones, or you want this timeline to be able to visually see when different things are starting and finishing. So obviously setting up a project as an actual project has a lot of advantages. This is much more suited to actual project management. We can see when things are starting and finishing. We can see different phases of work. We can see the timeline, dependencies as well. The only real disadvantage of doing this is that you can end up with lots of projects there on the left-hand sidebar. And this is where you do need something like portfolios, which is available on the business plan, to see different dashboards and views of all the projects that you're working on. Now, I generally recommend people use a bit of a hybrid approach. Sometimes you might set up projects as tasks, and you may even start a project as a task, but you can convert it into a project later if you need to. So as a really brief example, let's just set up a task here. This is a sample mini project. And I'm just going to give this a date range. Let's just say it's for the month of, let's say, September. And I'm going to set up some subtasks here. So subtask A, subtask B, subtask C. And actually, let's create some sections as well. So section 1, and let's go section 2, and section 3. And what we might do as well, actually, let's just leave it like that. So here's an example. We're setting up like a mini project. We're starting it off as a task because we don't want to necessarily create a whole project if we don't need one. If we're not going to use all those features, maybe we can get away with doing it like this, and we can kind of keep that sidebar a little bit cleaner. And I can put this mini project in, you know, any project or kind of departmental project that I've created in Asana. But let's say this really swells up and balloons to be like quite a lot of work, more than we anticipated. Well, then what we can do is in here, in the advanced actions, we can convert this to a project. So if I do that now, the description of the task will become the project description, the subtasks will become task, and so here we go, we can see it on the left-hand sidebar. There's my description of my project, and you can actually see it's linked back to the original task, which has now sort of been archived. My subtasks are now tasks, and everything's been just sort of moved up one level, which is really nice. And now I can unlock and use more features like adding milestones, or I could use the timeline and that kind of thing. And we can on here as well, the progress screen, we've got the dates, the original date range set there as well. And so to summarize the advice that I'm really trying to communicate in this video is there's no best way to set up your projects. What I do think though is you want to consider about maybe not setting up all of your projects as actual projects in Asana. Sometimes using a task is better, and just really taking advantage of subtasks. You can get away with setting up a project in that smaller way. And like I said, the benefit is that you keep your sidebar a little bit cleaner, more minimal. But then eventually, you know, maybe that grows into quite a lot of work. We want to use actual projects to unlock some of these more advanced features that project managers really need, in which case using an actual Asana project, there's obviously a lot of advantages to doing that. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. Generally, I would say start smaller, start a project off as a task. If it then becomes a larger piece of work, you can convert it into a project if you need to. And don't forget to archive your project when it's done. So over here, I can archive my project, and that way it's not gone. If I just archive that now, it's not gone from my account, but it does clean up the sidebar. And in my more archived here, I can go back and I can find my old archived project if I need to. So, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment below, and I will see you in the next video.